Elena Vasquez never thought running for her life would lead her to the greatest mystery of human history. But sometimes destiny finds you when you least expect it. It was 1523, and Elena was tired of running. For 3 months, she had been moving, from village to village, always looking over her shoulder. The Spanish authorities wanted her gone because she practiced herbal medicine. They called her work dangerous, but Elena knew better. She helped sick people get well using plants and old remedies her grandmother taught her. That was her only crime. The Carpathian Mountains of Romania seemed like the perfect place to disappear. These peaks were so remote that even the birds seemed to whisper secrets. Elena found a small valley hidden between 2 massive rocks where wildflowers grew, in colors she had never seen before. The air smelled sweet, and a tiny stream ran through the middle like nature's own music. She was collecting purple flowers for making healing tea when the ground started shaking. Elena thought it was just a small earthquake, nothing unusual for mountain areas. But then she heard a sound like thunder even though the sky was perfectly clear. Behind her, part of the mountain wall was sliding away like someone was opening a giant door. When the dust settled, Elena could not believe what she saw. There was an opening in the rock face, perfectly carved and smooth as glass. Stone doors had been hidden behind centuries of dirt and growing plants. The opening was just tall enough for a person to walk through, and strange symbols were carved all around it. These were not like any letters or pictures Elena had ever seen before. Her curiosity was stronger than her fear. Elena grabbed a thick branch, wrapped cloth around one end, and lit it to make a torch. The flame danced as she stepped toward the mysterious entrance. Cool air flowed out from inside, carrying a smell that reminded her of morning rain, mixed with something else she could not identify. The passage went straight into the mountain for about 50 steps before opening into a chamber that took her breath away. The room was perfectly round and bigger than any church Elena had ever seen. The walls were covered in the same strange symbols, but these were different. They seemed to glow softly in the torchlight, as if they were alive. But it was what stood in the center of the chamber that made Elena drop her torch. A man was lying on what looked like a bed made of crystal and metal. He appeared to be sleeping peacefully, but something was very wrong with this picture. His clothes were unlike anything Elena had ever seen. The fabric looked expensive but was cut in a style that seemed both ancient and somehow futuristic. His face was young, maybe 30 years old, with strong features and dark hair that looked perfectly groomed. Elena picked up her torch with shaking hands and moved closer. The man was breathing. She could see his chest rising and falling slowly and steadily. His skin had a healthy color, and when she carefully touched his forehead, it felt warm and normal. This was not a dead body. This was a living person who was somehow sleeping in the deepest part of a mountain. Around his crystal bed, Elena noticed amazing things. There were metal boxes with surfaces that seemed to shimmer like water. Tubes and wires connected everything together in patterns that hurt her head to look at. Some kind of liquid moved through clear containers glowing with soft blue light. The whole setup hummed quietly, like a giant cat purring. Elena spent hours in that chamber, trying to understand what she was seeing. She walked around the sleeping man dozens of times, studying every detail. She touched the strange machines carefully, afraid they might break or explode. But everything seemed solid and perfectly made. This was technology beyond anything her world knew about. As the day turned to evening, Elena heard voices echoing from outside the mountain. She quickly put out her torch and hid behind one of the larger machines. Through the entrance, she could see torches moving around in the valley. Men were calling to each other in a language she did not recognize. One voice spoke in broken Spanish with a heavy accent. The old woman in the village said someone new came to the mountains. We must find her before she discovers what we seek. Another voice answered. We have searched these peaks for generations. The chamber must be here somewhere. The ancient texts cannot be wrong. Elena felt ice in her stomach. These men were not looking for her specifically. They were looking for exactly what she had just found. But how did they know about this place? And why did they want to find this sleeping man? She stayed hidden, until the voices faded away and the torches disappeared. When she was sure they were gone, Elena lit her torch again and took one more look at the mysterious sleeper. In that moment, something incredible happened. Without opening his eyes or moving his body, the man spoke. His voice was quiet but clear, and somehow Elena understood every word even though he was not speaking Spanish. "Guardian," he whispered, "the time is not yet right. Protect this place. Protect me. Great danger comes for us both." Then he was silent again, breathing peacefully as if nothing had happened. Elena stood there for a long moment, her heart beating so fast she thought it might burst. She had witnessed something impossible, something that changed everything she thought she knew about the world. Elena made her decision right there in that glowing chamber. She did not understand who this man was or why he needed protection, but she knew those searchers meant harm. If they had been looking for generations, they would not stop now. Someone had to stand guard. She spent that night in the chamber, learning how the strange machines worked by watching and listening. The glowing liquid seemed to flow in patterns that matched the sleeping man's breathing. The metal boxes grew warm and cool in rhythm with something she could not see but could feel in the air around her. By morning, Elena knew what she had to do. She would build a home in this hidden valley. She would learn everything about this mysterious technology, and she would make sure that no matter who came looking, they would never find what they sought. As the sun rose over the mountains, Elena Vasquez began the most important job of her life. She became the guardian of secrets that were older than history itself. She had no idea that this choice would echo through 5 centuries, or that her simple decision to protect a sleeping stranger would change the fate of the entire world. The sleeping man had chosen well. Elena had a healer's heart and a fighter's spirit. She would need both for the long vigil that lay ahead. The first year was the hardest. Elena had to learn everything from scratch while staying completely hidden from the outside world. She built a small cottage using stones from the mountain and wood from the forest. The cottage sat perfectly positioned, where she could see anyone approaching the valley from 3 different directions. Every morning, Elena would check on the sleeping man. She learned to read the patterns of the glowing machines around him. When the blue liquid flowed faster, his breathing became deeper. When certain symbols on the walls pulsed brighter, the temperature in the chamber would change slightly. It was like learning a new language, but instead of words, she was reading the language of life itself. The machines were incredibly smart. They seemed to know exactly what the sleeping man needed at every moment. But they were also very old, and Elena noticed that some parts were starting to wear down. She became an expert at fixing things using materials she could find in the mountains. Metal scraps, certain types of stone, even specific plants seemed to work with the ancient technology in ways that made no sense, but somehow worked perfectly. One winter morning, Elena woke up to find the chamber's main power source flickering. The sleeping man's breathing had become shallow and irregular. Panic filled her chest as she realized that if the machines failed, he might die. She spent 3 days and nights working without sleep, trying different combinations of materials and techniques. Finally, she discovered that a special type of crystal from deep in the mountain could restore the power flow. The moment she placed it in the right position, everything returned to normal. That experience taught Elena something important. The sleeping man was not just being kept alive by the machines. He was part of them, connected in ways that went deeper than anything she had ever imagined. His life force was somehow linked to the technology, and the technology was linked to the mountain itself. It was all one living system. The searchers never stopped coming. Every few months, Elena would spot groups of men combing through the mountains. They had maps and tools that looked expensive. Some spoke languages she recognized. Others used words she had never heard before. But they all had the same desperate look in their eyes. They were hunting for something they believed would change everything. Elena became a master of misdirection. She would leave false trails leading to empty caves. She planted fake clues that sent the searchers to the wrong valleys. She even started rumors in nearby villages about strange lights and sounds coming from completely different mountains. The local people began to think of her as a wise woman who knew the secrets of the peaks and they helped her without knowing what they were really protecting. One group of searchers was different from the rest. They wore identical dark clothes and moved with military precision. Their leader was a tall woman with cold eyes who seemed to know more about the chamber than the others. She came to Elena's cottage one evening and asked direct questions about ancient technology and sleeping guardians. Elena pretended to be just a simple herb woman who lived alone in the mountains. She offered the woman tea and spoke about the weather and the difficulty of growing vegetables at such high altitude. But inside, her heart was racing. This woman knew things that the others did not. She was much more dangerous than random treasure hunters or curious scholars. "Old woman," the leader said as she prepared to leave, "if you ever see anything unusual in these mountains, anything that does not belong, you should tell us immediately. We represent people who have been searching for something very important, for a very long time. There would be great rewards for the right information." Elena nodded and smiled like a confused old lady. "Of course, dear, though I must say after living here for so many years I find that the mountains are full of unusual things. Strange lights, odd sounds, rocks that seem to move by themselves. But I suppose that is just the way of wild places." The woman's eyes narrowed. "What kind of strange lights?" Elena waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, probably just reflections from the lake on the other side of the peaks. Or maybe spirits of the mountain, as the village people like to say. I have learned not to pay much attention to such things." After the woman left, Elena knew she had to be even more careful. These people were not giving up. They were getting closer to the truth with each visit. She needed to find new ways to protect the chamber and its sleeping occupant. Elena started studying the symbols on the chamber walls more seriously. She spent hours each day copying them into notebooks and trying to understand their meaning. Slowly, she began to recognize patterns. Some symbols seemed to represent time, others showed star positions, and still others appeared to be some kind of countdown. The more she learned, the more Elena realized that the sleeping man was not just hiding from enemies. He was waiting for something specific to happen. The machines were not just keeping him alive. They were keeping him ready for a particular moment in time. But when would that moment come? And what would happen when it arrived? Years passed, and Elena felt herself aging while the sleeping man remained exactly the same. Her hair turned gray, then white. Her hands developed wrinkles and spots. Her back began to ache from climbing the mountain paths. But every day she continued her vigil, learning more about the ancient technology and growing more skilled at protecting its secrets. The local mountain people began to tell stories about Elena. They said she was blessed by the mountain spirits and could predict the weather better than anyone. They brought her small gifts of food and supplies, and in return, she helped them with healing herbs and advice about their problems. They never asked too many questions about why she lived alone in such a remote place, and Elena was grateful for their respect. One night, as Elena sat beside the sleeping man during a particularly difficult repair of the machines, she spoke to him out loud. "I do not know who you are or why you are here," she said softly. "But I promise you this, no matter how long it takes, no matter who comes looking, I will keep you safe. You chose me to be your guardian, and I will not fail you for just a moment." Elena thought she saw the sleeping man's lips curve into the faintest smile, but when she looked again, his face was peaceful and still as always. Still, she felt a warm feeling in her chest as if somehow he had heard her promise and was grateful. Elena realized that this was no longer just a duty she had chosen. It had become the most important purpose of her life. She was not just protecting a sleeping stranger anymore. She was guarding hope itself, keeping something precious safe until the world was ready for its return. Elena was 73 years old when she realized time was running out. Her hands shook when she climbed the mountain paths, and her eyesight was not as sharp as it used to be. The sleeping man looked exactly the same as the day she found him, 50 years ago. But Elena's reflection in the chamber's crystal surfaces showed an old woman with deep wrinkles and silver hair. The searchers were still coming, and they were getting smarter. They had better tools now and seemed to understand more about what they were looking for. Elena knew that when her time came, someone else would need to take over the sacred duty of protection. But who could she trust with such an incredible secret? The answer came in the form of Maria Santos, a young woman who arrived in the mountain village during the harsh winter of 1748. Maria was 24 years old and carried herself with the same quiet strength that Elena remembered having in her youth. She was fleeing from her own troubles in the lowlands where people had grown suspicious of her healing abilities. Elena first met Maria when the young woman came looking for herbs to help a sick child in the village. As Maria described the child's symptoms, Elena noticed something special about her knowledge. Maria understood plants and healing in ways that went beyond simple folk medicine. She had an intuitive sense about what people needed, almost as if she could feel their pain as her own. "You have the gift," Elena told Maria after they had successfully treated the sick child together. "Not many people can sense what you sense." Maria looked surprised. "My grandmother always said I was different. She taught me about plants and healing, but I could always tell when she was holding something back, like there were bigger secrets she wanted to share but was afraid to." Elena felt a chill of recognition. Perhaps this was not a coincidence. Perhaps the same forces that had led Elena to the chamber had now brought Maria to the mountains. Elena decided to test the young woman's character before revealing anything important. Over the next few months, Elena gave Maria small tasks and watched how she handled them. She asked Maria to care for injured animals, to help elderly villagers with their problems, and to keep secrets about people's private troubles. In every case, Maria showed patience, wisdom, and absolute trustworthiness. The real test came when a group of searchers arrived in the village asking questions about strange lights and unusual sounds in the mountains. Maria was in the market when they started questioning people, and Elena watched from a distance to see what the young woman would do. The searchers showed Maria old drawings that looked remarkably similar to the symbols Elena had seen in the chamber. They offered gold coins for any information about ancient ruins or hidden chambers. Most people in the village just shook their heads and said they knew nothing, but Elena noticed that Maria studied the drawings carefully before answering. "These symbols look very old," Maria said to the searchers, "but I have never seen anything like them in these mountains. Perhaps you should try the valleys to the south, where there are more caves and old ruins." Elena felt a surge of pride and relief. Without knowing anything about the real situation, Maria had instinctively given the searchers false information to protect whatever they were hunting for. This was exactly the kind of person Elena had been hoping to find. That evening, Elena invited Maria to her cottage for dinner. As they sat by the fire, Elena began to tell her story carefully, watching Maria's reactions to each revelation. She started with small truths about her past, and gradually worked up to bigger secrets. "Maria," Elena said finally, "what I am about to tell you will change your life forever. Once you know this secret, you can never go back to being the person you were before. Are you prepared for that kind of responsibility?" Maria looked into the fire for a long moment before answering. "Elena, I have felt my whole life like I was meant for something important, something bigger than just helping sick people in small villages. If you trust me enough to share your secret, then I am ready to hear it." Elena took a deep breath and began to tell Maria about the chamber, the sleeping man, and the 50 years she had spent protecting them both. She watched Maria's face carefully, expecting shock or disbelief. Instead, she saw understanding and acceptance, as if Maria had been waiting her whole life to hear exactly this story. "Can I see him?" Maria asked when Elena finished talking. The next morning, Elena led Maria to the hidden chamber. Maria's reaction was everything Elena had hoped for. She approached the sleeping man with reverence and wonder, but not fear. She studied the ancient machines with the curiosity of someone who wanted to understand and help, not exploit or destroy. "He is beautiful," Maria whispered, looking down at the peaceful face of the sleeping man. "And so young. How long has he been waiting like this?" "I do not know," Elena answered. "But I believe he is waiting for the right time to wake up, and that time has not come yet. Until it does, someone must protect him from those who would harm him." Maria nodded solemnly. "And you want me to take over this protection when you are gone?" "I want you to learn everything I can teach you," Elena said. "The machines, the symbols, the ways to hide this place from searchers. But most importantly, I want you to understand that this is not just about keeping one person safe. I believe this man is connected to something much bigger, something that could affect the entire world. Over the next 2 years, Elena taught Maria everything she had learned during her decades as guardian. They worked together to maintain the machines, study the symbols, and develop new ways to protect the chamber from increasingly sophisticated searchers. Maria proved to be an excellent student, quickly mastering skills that had taken Elena years to develop. Elena also shared her growing understanding of who the sleeping man really was. Through decades of study, she had concluded that he was not entirely human. The way the machines responded to him, the perfect preservation of his body, and the otherworldly nature of the technology all pointed to something beyond normal human experience. I think he is one of the old ones, Elena told Maria during one of their long conversations in the chamber. From a time before our history began, when the world was different. He is sleeping through our age, waiting for a time when he will be needed again. Maria absorbed all of this information with remarkable calm. She seemed to understand instinctively that she was being prepared for a role that was both honor and burden. She asked thoughtful questions and made intelligent suggestions about improving their protection methods. The transfer of guardianship happened naturally as Elena's health declined. Maria gradually took over more of the daily responsibilities, while Elena focused on sharing the deeper wisdom she had gained through years of meditation and study beside the sleeping man. On a quiet spring morning in 1750, Elena woke up feeling different. She knew, with the certainty that comes to people near the end of their lives, that her time was almost finished. She called Maria to her bedside and spoke her final words as guardian. "Promise me," Elena whispered, holding Maria's hands tightly, "that no matter what happens, no matter how long it takes, you will keep him safe until he is ready to wake up. Promise me that the guardianship will continue." "I promise," Maria said solemnly. "I will protect him with my life, just as you have done." Elena smiled peacefully and closed her eyes. That night, as she passed away in her sleep, something extraordinary happened in the chamber. The sleeping man's breathing changed rhythm for the first time in 50 years. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter than Maria had ever seen them. And for just a moment, the sleeping man's lips moved, as if he was saying goodbye to an old friend and welcoming a new protector. Maria understood that she had just witnessed the passing of a sacred trust from one guardian to the next. Elena's vigil was complete, but the long watch would continue. The sleeping man was safe for another generation, protected by hands that were young and strong and committed to keeping faith with mysteries older than memory itself. Maria Santos kept her promise for over a century. She passed the guardianship to her adopted daughter Carmen, who passed it to Rosa, who passed it to Isabella, and so on through the generations. Each guardian added their own knowledge and skills to the ancient duty, but the core mission never changed: protect the sleeping man until the time comes for him to wake up. By 2020, the world had changed in ways that Elena could never have imagined. The guardian lineage had adapted to cars, electricity, computers, and cell phones. The current guardian, Sofia Reyes, was the 7th woman to hold this sacred responsibility. She was 32 years old, a computer programmer by day and protector of ancient secrets by night. Sofia lived in a modern house built exactly where Elena's original cottage had stood. From the outside, it looked like any other mountain retreat where city people came to escape technology and stress. Solar panels powered the house, and a satellite dish provided internet connection. But beneath the modern exterior, Sofia carried the same dedication that had driven every guardian before her. The chamber itself had evolved too. Sofia had carefully integrated modern technology with the ancient systems. Computer monitors displayed the status of the sleeping man's vital signs. Motion sensors throughout the mountain alerted her to any approaching visitors. Hidden cameras watched every path leading to the valley. The old crystal bed now had backup power systems and climate controls that would make any hospital jealous. But for all these improvements, Sofia faced a threat that no previous guardian had ever dealt with. The world was now connected in ways that made hiding almost impossible. Satellite images could show every square meter of the mountains. Ground-penetrating radar could detect hollow spaces deep underground. Social media meant that any unusual activity could be shared instantly with millions of people. The modern searchers were not random treasure hunters or curious scholars anymore. They were part of a massive corporation called Meridian Industries, and they had resources that seemed unlimited. Sophia first learned about them when she noticed unusual activity on her security cameras. Helicopters were flying systematic search patterns over the mountains. Teams of people in matching uniforms were taking soil samples and setting up equipment that looked far more advanced than anything she had seen before. Sophia spent weeks researching Meridian Industries online. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The company claimed to be focused on archaeological research and historical preservation, but their real business was much darker. They collected ancient artifacts and lost technologies, then sold access to the highest bidders. Governments and wealthy individuals paid enormous amounts of money for weapons, medicines, and tools that came from civilizations most people thought were just myths. Even worse, Sophia found evidence that Meridian had been tracking the Guardian lineage for decades. They had photos of Maria from the 1800s, documents about Carmen from the early 1900s, and detailed files on every Guardian who had come after. Somehow, they had pieced together enough information to know that something incredibly valuable was hidden in these specific mountains. The company's research division was led by a man named Dr. Vincent Cross, who had written papers about suspended animation technologies and prehistorical advanced civilizations. His theories were considered crazy by mainstream scientists, but Sophia could see that he was actually very close to the truth. He knew that the sleeping man existed, and he had a good idea of where to find him. Sophia realized that Meridian's approach was completely different from the old searchers. Instead of wandering around hoping to get lucky, they were using systematic scientific methods to narrow down the search area. They had divided the mountains into a grid and were checking each section with machines that could detect unusual energy signatures underground. It was only a matter of time before they found the chamber. The worst part was their technology for forced awakening. Sophia discovered patents that Meridian had filed for devices designed to interrupt suspended animation states. Dr. Cross had written about using electromagnetic pulses and sonic frequencies to wake up subjects who had been sleeping for extended periods. If they found the sleeping man, they would not wait for him to wake up naturally. They would force him awake using methods that might damage his mind or even kill him. Sophia knew she needed help, but the Guardian tradition had always been about working alone. She could not trust anyone outside the lineage with such dangerous knowledge, but she also could not fight an entire corporation by herself. She spent sleepless nights trying to figure out what to do. The solution came from an unexpected source. While researching Meridian's activities, Sophia discovered that they had enemies. Other groups were working to stop them from getting their hands on dangerous technologies. Environmental activists were concerned about their mining operations. Government investigators were looking into their illegal artifact smuggling. Scientists were worried about their experiments with dangerous energies. Sophia carefully made contact with some of these people without revealing her real situation. She started sharing information about Meridian's activities in the mountains, claiming to be a local environmentalist concerned about damage to the ecosystem. She provided photos of their equipment and details about their search patterns, which helped other groups build legal cases against the company. But Sophia knew that legal challenges would only slow Meridian down, not stop them completely. They had too much money and too many connections. When they got close enough to the chamber, they would simply ignore any court orders or environmental regulations. They would take what they wanted and deal with the consequences later. The breakthrough came when Sophia managed to hack into Meridian's computer systems. She had been a programmer for 10 years, and her skills were far beyond what any previous Guardian had possessed. She discovered that Meridian's search had narrowed down to an area of just 5 square kilometers. They had identified 3 possible locations for the chamber, and Sophia's Valley was at the top of their list. Even more alarming, Sophia found emails between Dr. Cross and the company's executives discussing timeline. They were planning a major operation for the following month. They would bring in heavy drilling equipment and excavation teams. They would work around the clock until they found what they were looking for, regardless of local laws or environmental concerns. Sophia realized that she was facing the final crisis. After nearly 300 years, the Guardian lineage had run out of time and options. The sleeping man's hiding place was about to be discovered by people who wanted to exploit his power for profit. The ancient technology would be torn apart and studied in corporate laboratories. The peaceful sleep that had lasted for centuries would end in violence and chaos. But Sophia was not ready to give up. She had one advantage that Elena and all the other Guardians had never possessed. She understood both the ancient technology and modern systems. She could use computers to enhance the chamber's defenses. She could use the internet to coordinate with the sleeping man's enemies. Most importantly, she could use her knowledge of both worlds to find a solution that no one else would expect. As Sophia sat in the chamber beside the sleeping man, she spoke to him for the first time in her life as Guardian. "I know you can hear me," she said softly. "I know you have been waiting for the right moment to wake up. But we may not have the luxury of waiting anymore. They are coming for you, and they will be here soon." For just a moment, Sophia thought she saw the sleeping man's eyelids flutter, as if he was fighting to respond to her words. The machines around him hummed more intensely, and the symbols on the wall seemed to pulse with greater energy. Sophia felt a strange certainty that he was aware of the danger and was preparing himself for whatever was about to happen. The final confrontation was coming, and Sophia would have to make choices that would determine whether the centuries of guardianship had been worth the sacrifice. Sophia woke up at 3 in the morning to the sound of helicopters. Her motion sensors were going crazy, and her computer screens showed at least 20 vehicles moving up the mountain roads. Meridian Industries was not waiting for their scheduled operation. They were coming now in the middle of the night, hoping to catch her off guard. She grabbed her emergency bag and ran to the chamber as fast as her legs could carry her. The ancient machines were humming louder than she had ever heard them before. The symbols on the walls were glowing so brightly that she did not need a flashlight to see. Something was happening that had never happened in 500 years of guardianship. The sleeping man's face looked different. His breathing was deeper and more regular. His skin seemed to have more color, and there was something about his expression that looked more alive. Sophia realized with a mixture of hope and terror that he was already beginning to wake up on his own. The approaching danger had somehow triggered a response in the ancient systems. Sophia could hear heavy machinery moving. Outside, through her security cameras, she watched Meridian's team setting up drilling equipment and excavation tools. They had brought floodlights that turned the dark valley into something that looked like a construction site. Dr. Cross was there himself, directing the operation and checking readings on devices that Sophia did not recognize. She had maybe 30 minutes before they broke through the outer barriers that had hidden the chamber for so long. All of Elena's careful camouflage, all of the false trails and misdirection that generations of Guardians had created, was about to be swept away by modern technology and brute force. Sophia knelt beside the crystal bed and looked into the sleeping man's face. For the first time in her life as Guardian, she broke the most sacred rule of the lineage. No Guardian had ever tried to wake him before his time. They had all trusted that he would know when the moment was right. But Sophia could not stand by and watch him be captured by people who would treat him like an object to be studied and exploited. "Please," she whispered, placing her hand gently on his forehead. "Please wake up. They are coming to get us, and I do not know how to protect you anymore. I have tried everything I can think of, but they have too many people and too much equipment. If you can hear me, if you are ready, please wake up now. We need you." The response was immediate and incredible. The sleeping man's eyes opened for the first time in 5 centuries. They were deep blue, like the color of the ocean at twilight, and they looked directly into Sophia's face with complete awareness and understanding. He sat up smoothly, as if he had only been napping for a few minutes instead of sleeping for hundreds of years. "Sophia," he said in a voice that was warm and strong. "Thank you for calling me back. I have been dreaming of this moment for longer than you can imagine." Sophia was so shocked that she almost fell backward. "You know my name? You know who I am?" The Man smiled and stood up from the crystal bed. He was tall and moved with a grace that seemed almost supernatural. I know all of you. Elena, Maria, Carmen, Rosa, Isabella, Carmen II, and you. I have been aware of everything that happened around me during my sleep. Every guardian, every threat, every moment of protection. You have all been part of my dreams. Outside, the sound of drilling was getting louder. The man listened for a moment and his expression became serious. They are very close now. And you are right to be afraid of them. These people do not understand what they are seeking to control. If they had found me while I was still sleeping, they could have damaged not just me, but the balance that keeps your world stable. What are you? Sophia asked, though part of her already knew the answer. I am one of the Watchers, he replied, simply. My people have been guardians of this world since before your civilizations began. We sleep through the ages when humanity does not need us, and we wake when great changes are coming. The time of my awakening means that your world is about to face challenges that will require guidance from those who have seen such things before. The drilling sound suddenly got much louder, and Sophia could hear voices shouting orders. They have found the outer chamber, the man said calmly. We have perhaps 10 minutes before they break through to this room. Sophia felt panic rising in her chest. What do we do? How do we get out of here? There are too many of them, and they have surrounded the entire valley. The man walked over to one of the walls and placed his hand on a section of symbols that Sophia had never seen glow before. The wall slid open silently, revealing a passage that had been completely hidden for centuries. The chamber has more secrets than even the Guardians knew about, he said. This passage leads to a cave system that connects to the other side of the mountain range. We can escape without being seen. But before they left, the man did something that amazed Sophia even more than his awakening. He touched a series of symbols on the main control panel, and the entire chamber began to change. The crystal bed dissolved into sparkling dust. The machines folded themselves into compact shapes and disappeared into hidden compartments. The glowing symbols faded from the walls, leaving only blank stone behind. The technology will hide itself until it is needed again, he explained. When Meridian's people break through, they will find an empty cave with nothing special about it. All their research and effort will seem to have been wasted. As they moved through the hidden passage, Sophia could hear the sound of drilling finally, breaking through into the main chamber. She could imagine Dr. Cross and his team rushing inside, expecting to find the greatest discovery in human history, only to discover a completely ordinary cave with no trace of the wonders that had been there just moments before. The passage led them to a cave opening on the far side of the mountain, miles away from Meridian's operation. When they emerged into the pre-dawn darkness, Sophia could see the lights from the excavation site in the distance, but they were completely safe from detection. What happens now? Sophia asked as they walked away from the mountain that had been her home for so long. The man who told her his name was Adrian smiled at her with genuine warmth. Now we begin a new phase of the guardianship. You have protected me for the final part of my sleep, but the real work is just beginning. The world is going to need guidance in the years ahead, and I will need someone who understands both the old ways and the new technologies, someone who has proven their dedication and wisdom through years of faithful service. Sophia realized that her role was not ending with Adrian's awakening. It was transforming into something new and even more important. She was no longer just protecting a sleeping figure from harm. She was becoming a partner in protecting the entire world from the challenges that lay ahead. As the sun rose over the mountains, Sophia and Adrian walked together toward an uncertain but hopeful future. Behind them, Meridian Industries continued, their fruitless excavation of an empty cave. The 500-year vigil was complete, but the real adventure was just beginning. Sophia thought about Elena, who had started this incredible journey so long ago. She wished the first guardian could know that her promise had been kept, that the sleeping man had awakened safely, and that the trust passed down through 7 generations of women had led to this moment of triumph. The ancient secret was safe. The guardian tradition would continue, and the world had gained a protector it did not even know it needed. Sometimes the greatest victories are the ones that nobody else ever hears about.